So this is the third one that I'm going to teach you guys. Then we're going to go into like playing with the models that we've learnt so far in a minute, and then I'll teach you the last one after that. So basically, this is the drama cycle. It is a model that was created by Stephen Karpman, and basically we've got kind of three parts to this, right? So we've got the villain, we've got the rescuer, and then we've got the victim. Okay, and they all have a job. So the villain's job is to blame. So the villain's job is like, you know, just say they had an assignment due at a certain time and they didn't get it done on time. Oh, I didn't get it done because I had all of this stuff going on in my personal life, and they only gave me like 3 days to do it. So, you know, why didn't that happen sooner? Like it's a lot of blame game. It was everybody else's fault, but not mine, right? Then we've got the rescuer. So this is very much like the good girl role that I was just talking about just then. Their job is to be the hero. Their job is to save. You know, how can I save? How can I be the hero? And the problem with this role is that it comes at the expense of yourself. It's to the detriment of yourself, right? Then we've got the last one, which is the victim. So the victim feels powerless. Oh, this stuff is always happening to me. You know, why did COVID happen? Why can't I ever, you know, have clients come into my business? Why? Like, that's a very like why question is the questions that they ask themselves. And I've actually popped in here some of the regular thoughts that these people have. So for the victim, the thoughts that they'll have a lot is, this always happens to me, you know, or they'll go, oh, it's bound to happen to me, or something like that, you know. It's and they might even do it jokingly. So, oh, this stuff always happens to me, ha 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 ha, and like joke it off, but really it's part of the drama cycle they're playing out. The villain does a self-righteous type role. So in the blame game, it's like they are wrong, I'm right. So, you know, like I said, you know, using the example of the assignment being late or whatever, it's like, oh, like they didn't really give me enough time to do it, you know, whereas, you know, it may be that they just didn't spend the time studying or whatever. And then the rescuer type hero saving role will go, oh, I'll help them to avoid myself. So they are helping others at the expense of themselves, but they typically haven't already dealt with their own stuff. And they'll say things, or they'll think things like, if they just did X, Y, Z, then, you know, they'd be happy, right? Like, I know it all kind of thing. And why won't they listen to me? And there's a lot of energy spent in that. And when there's a lot of energy spent in that, it's draining. It is so draining. Now, the thing to know about all of these is that they all have a reason behind them. So their reason behind them is to be right. So to prove themselves right, to validate their own stories. Their reason behind it is because they have that fear and that adrenaline running through their body. So if we think about the blame game for a minute, you know, it's like it's easier to blame somebody else out of the fear that you're going to get it wrong, you know, or people are going to perceive you in a certain way, right? So there's righteousness, there's fear, and the last one is blame. You know, it's easier to blame others than to take responsibility for ourselves. Now, I've explained the really in-depth part of this, guys. I'm going to explain the opposite role in a minute. Basically, what I want you guys to remember, like if you want to kind of simplify this and just take it really high chunk for a minute, the way to remember this is like, if you can see a client doing things that make life dramatic for them, right? So I've certainly picked this up with a lot of clients when it comes to business, where they build up all of this drama before going and taking the action. So they'll be like, oh, I've got to write all of this content this week, and, you know, it needs to get out. And I said that I was going to do a class, and I'm going to run this program, but, you know, I've got to do all of these things first. And they talk about it, and they talk about all the drama that they've got to do. They spend all that energy talking about the drama of the thing that they've got to do, that they don't actually go and get the thing done. This happens a lot in business. I can't tell you how many times I've coached on this. And I've actually experienced it myself, you know, so I couldn't coach on something that I hadn't experienced myself, right? And so one of the things to kind of understand with this is like understanding, where did they get this from? And the first time my coach pulled me up on this, she was like, typically when you're going through a drama cycle, it's because you have grown up in this sort of scenario where there is a lot of drama in your household. And I was like, holy shit, she's right. Like, when I thought about my family, what would happen is just say something happened with my cousin would then tell my aunt, you know, blah, blah, blah happened. My aunt would call my grandma would call my mum. I come from a European family, can you tell? And then my mum would call me and be like, oh my God, guess what happened to your cousin? Blah, 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 blah happened. Your auntie told me, who told your grandma, who told me, but don't tell anyone. It's a big secret, but it's a big secret that everyone knows. Typical European family, right? And so there was a lot of drama around that, you know, that was like what I grew up with all the time, but I didn't know it, you know, like before I went into the coaching world or anything, I was like, that's just the way it is. Like everybody tells everyone and nobody knows nothing, but everyone knows everything. Like that was just how I knew life to be. And so unconsciously, I was playing out those same patterns in other areas, seeking drama in relationships, seeking drama in friendships, seeking drama in business, because I didn't know that it was happening, right? So once I realized this pattern, I realized that I created a whole heap of drama before actually going and doing the work that didn't need to happen. So I dropped that real quick and I was like, okay, what do I need to do? Just go and do the thing, Donna. I also noticed it playing out in my relationship as well. Like once this came up, I was like, oh, it's coming up everywhere, you know, whereby my, at the time, boyfriend, now husband, we would create drama in our finances so that we had something to bond over, something to connect over. Right? So we do like the up and down roller coaster cycle in our businesses because then we got to bond over something. As soon as we dropped that, we made a butt ton of money, buttload of money, but we had to drop the drama cycle first before we could do, you know, get off the up and down roller coaster cycle. Okay. I'm just going to check the chat box. Same with your Asian family. I think a lot of people can relate to this, like European family or not. So the opposite to this, guys, and transforming this particular thing is actively, like for me personally, I just had to have the knowledge of this to go and make the change. So it's going to depend on the individual. For some people, and this is with any type of coaching model or thing, sometimes conscious awareness is enough. And then sometimes they're going to need some sort of NLP, you know, whether that be timeline therapy or whatever else, like, you know, they might need something deeper in order to, you know, kind of work through that thing that had happened. But, you know, for me personally, because I'd already done a lot of coaching, it was like conscious awareness, bang, let's go make the change, right? And so what that can look like for each of these roles is if you were the victim, and by the way, before I kind of go into these, you will have one that is your go-to unconsciously, right? So victim might be your go-to unconsciously, villain might be your go-to unconsciously, rescuer might be your go-to unconsciously, right? Mine was rescuer, wanted to save everybody and all the rest of it. So, you know, you'll kind of like, as you look at them, you'll kind of go, oh yeah, I can see some sort of association to that, whether it's present to you now, whether it was present to you at a certain point in time. So yeah, you'll have one that you are drawn to most, but you can do all of them. So that's why I've got the arrows here, because what can happen is you could be the rescuer trying to rescue everyone and then going, if only they did this, then they would be happy, right? Then you go into victim because it's like, oh, like they're not listening to me. What's the point? I shouldn't even be doing this. And then you go into villain. It's like, you know what, like if they just listened to me, then, you know, all of their problems would be solved. You know, they're wrong, I'm right? So you can actually go into a cycle of doing all of these things. And that's really important to know. Now, the opposite of this is, and let's just start with the rescuer here, is being the coach. So not actually thinking like, if I do this, then I'm going to save them from something, because that is not being a coach. That is not helping anyone. You know, jumping in the pit with somebody doesn't help them. Actually allowing people to step up and be the adult themselves is what allows them to grow. When you see a client as being somebody who is a capable adult rather than somebody who needs saving, you empower them to step up. That's where you get clients who get results. When you're trying to save your clients, you don't empower them to step up and get results, because you're seeing them as someone who needs to be rescued. And by default, they see themselves as somebody who needs to be rescued. So it's so important as a coach that you literally be the coach and you go, I know you have what it takes to do this thing. And I believe in you 110%. And it's up to you to kind of step up and really take ownership of that you are the power. You are the one who can make this happen, right? You are, if you're, you know, guy, then, you know, you're the king of your kingdom, you're the queen of your queendom, you know, whatever it is, like, you've got this, right? And they have to feel that sense for themselves. You rescuing them doesn't allow them to do that. And that was something that I did earlier on in my coaching journey. The next one is the victim. So the opposite to that is the creator. So rather than, oh, everything happens to me, it's like, well, what can I do? How can I change this? What needs to happen? You know, so it's kind of like possibility questions. Rather than going, all of this contraction energy happens to me, it's going, well, what else is possible? The next one is the challenger. So again, the challenger is like, rather than they are wrong and blame, it's like, okay, well, how can we expand things? You know, rather than them being wrong and me trying to prove myself right, which is a whole lot of shitty energy, what if I was to go, well, you know, what if we did this? Or have you tried doing that? You know, challenge them on their point of view to expand their way of thinking, right? That's the challenger. That's the expander. Okay, so that's how you kind of have the opposite to that. And how you guys would do this in your coaching is you do it through questions. You know, so when it comes to being a coach, rather than getting in the hole with them. So this is the thing that I used to do in my coaching is I used to do like a check-in with clients and all the rest of it. You know, if I hadn't heard from them in a while or whatever, I'd like check in on them rather than allowing them to actually step up and say, hey, Donna, something's wrong. I need your help right now. I knew if they went quiet that something was wrong. But what I did wrong in that moment, and you guys are all going to do something in your coaching journey like we all do, what I did wrong in that moment is I followed them up. I didn't let them come to me. I didn't allow them to step up for themselves. So I was trying to be Captain Save-A-Ho, you know, like just saving everybody, right? And that wasn't the right way to coach, I recognize now, because it was saving them from actually stepping up and expressing their needs. They were suppressing their needs by not saying anything, right? So by you actually being the coach and stepping back just enough to allow them to step up, you allowed them to start learning to do things that they've never done before, like express, hey, I feel really stuck with XYZ, okay? When it comes to being the creator, you know, again, it's that sense of like really allowing them to, you know, asking questions like, you know, how else could we do this? You know, what would be possible if you did this? Let's just, you know, take away the, because a lot of people go into like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be this. I want to be, you know, blah, blah, blah. They'll tell you all the things that they don't want. So one of the questions that really helps there is like, well, tell me all the things that you do want. And then they start getting creative in their mind, getting the creator out. It's like, oh, maybe I could do this, you know, if I want to do this and I want to do that. And they start thinking about the possibilities of like what could happen. And then the challenger. So the challenger expands, you know, what else is possible is a really good question for that one. You know, what else is possible? How else could we do that? That's the challenger question.